Hello and welcome to today's live webinar. Today I'm going to be talking about how to generate ROI from customer experience. This is my favorite topic and bear with me as we go through this, starting a little bit late today. So today we're going to go through why it's important, how to measure it, what's the problem with it. Let me share my screen. So the problem with measuring the ROI of customer experience, it's actually not very easy. And especially when you're making customer experience investments, it's actually very hard to say this particular investment generated this ROI. And if you think about the ROI, you've got the return on that CX investment. So if I were to do a journey that helped nudge people along the path to purchase, how do I actually attribute the independent value from that one journey onto your bottom line, or justify that back to your stakeholders? So that's the problem that we're going to really try solve today. So this is everything. ROI generally from CX investments is usually tracked fairly manually, and it's fairly arbitrary. It's saying, yeah, we think there's a value on this. We put it into a presentation to justify it to our stakeholders, but then we never really come back to it and say what actually happened. Finance certainly don't often have an actual report that they have that clearly indicates this is the ROI that was generated from this one investment or initiative that we ran with our customer experience. Often also when we're talking about customer experience initiatives, we intuitively know that there's value in it. We intuitively know that it's a good idea, but actually proving that it did do that and had an impact and made some value for either the organization or for your customers, it's very, very difficult to tangibly do that. So, we intuitively know it's important, but the actual result is difficult. One thing Gary Vaynerchuk used to talk about the ROI of social media all the time. I remember him saying this, and he would say, measuring the ROI of social is like measuring the ROI of your mother. It's like she fed me, she took care of me, she gave me my confidence in life. She was there for me when I was upset. All of these things that she did all throughout my life, I can't exactly attribute ROI to my mother, but I know that my mother was everything in making me who I am. So, and that's how marketers think about these less tangible things that they do with their marketing is, how do I measure it? It's everything. I need it. I need it in order for us to have a successful customer experience. And it's true, but there is actually methods and ways to do it. And mostly clients don't have a way to, a formal process to approve, set goals, and track results. So, we used to think back in the days, there would be a business case. When I say back in the days, a lot of marketers don't do business cases, but IT projects used to have a business case where they actually say, this is what we assume the benefit of this investment will be. And there should be a tracking mechanism in place. There should be an approval process before you do the project. There should be a bit more formality around the investments that we're making into the customer experience. But because it's very intuitive and we know it's the right thing to do, we often skip those steps and just jump straight to the solution. So this is really what we're trying to tackle, is actually how to get a bit more formality around the process to justify a customer experience initiative so that it's less guesswork and more fact. What I'm really excited about is we have an upcoming series of events happening across Australia. It's 12th of October in Sydney, 19th of October in Melbourne, 26th of October in Brisbane, and the 2nd of November in Adelaide. All of these events are going to be held in the AICD offices. That's the Australian Institute of Company Directors. And tickets are limited. We've still got tickets available. Please register. There is a bit.ly down below, and I'll share a link in the comments. as well. Basically, it's a networking event. Everyone will come in. It's going to be an awesome set of people. We'll have tea and coffee, go into a short talk by myself. And then after that, there'll be morning tea and a bit more networking so you can meet the other members and we can talk about ROI formally and informally. It's very exciting. I'm all about this at the moment. So at a high level, there is 3 parts to this. So the first part is really understanding the anatomy of ROI for customer experience. The second part is how do you hypothesize? How do you guess or assume what you believe the ROI might be? And then the third step is actually tracking it and reporting on it. So this gives you a complete picture of how to measure the ROI of customer experience. So firstly, let's talk about the anatomy, the levers for ROI. And obviously, there's a lot of different places you can get ROI from. These are 4 very obvious places that some people may not have all of these covered or a method to track or hypothesize these. So I'll go through them very quickly. The first is your CRO of your funnel, your conversion rate optimization. And this is saying that if I get a lead in the top of my funnel, how easy does it convert down to a paying customer? And if I can determine the lifetime value of my customer once they convert, and I know the conversion rates, then I can value my funnel. I can value an impression from an ad all the way down to a qualified marketing lead or a sales lead that is making an inquiry to buy. So if I can value all of those things, then I can actually attribute a value to every lead I generate, every inquiry I get, even before they've made a sale. The CAC, the customer acquisition cost, is another key area of the ROI equation. And this is very simple. If you think about the amount of money that you spend every year on acquiring customers, which includes your marketing and your sales costs, may include your media spend, your signage, your store frontage, anything that you spend on trying to get customers through the door, that's your CAC. So the way of calculating this is if I think about the total number of customers I acquire every year and how much do I spend on all acquisition costs every year, then you divide one by the other and you get the customer acquisition cost. The third point is around the data or compliance breach cost. And this is a bit more of a fuzzy number because it's more about risk management. So if I can reduce the likelihood of a customer data breach by 1%, what is that worth to the business? And I will talk through the method of doing this in more detail. Customer data breach is one area that's a major area of concern for many boards, and it's something that you absolutely need to pay attention to. The other area is lesser known, and it's more in the marketing area, but it's customer spam breach risk. So if I think about emailing my customer database, and if someone unsubscribes and then I continue to email them, that is a spam breach. There is legislation against doing this, and large organizations are fined millions of dollars every year for not respecting the people that unsubscribe to their marketing. So that's a very important area that you need to pay attention to. And finally, increasing the customer spend or the customer lifetime spend. And we do that by looking at 3 major metrics: recency, frequency, and monetary value. So the recency obviously is when was the last time they bought for you? Have they lapsed as a customer? The frequency is how often do they purchase from you every year? And the monetary value is how big is the basket size or the average purchase amount? So if we can tweak each of those metrics, then we can really get a lot more value out of that customer, and obviously the tenure as well. So we're really looking to extend that tenure, and that's through the recency metric, is to say, I really want them to keep coming back and keep being a customer for as long as possible. I don't want them to go to my competitor. So one major thing that you need to really have figured out in your organization is your current customer lifetime value. And every organization will have an average customer lifetime value. So if you look at these numbers from a top-down perspective, you can really see, okay, my average payment size is $45. On average, customers buy once per month, and on average, the tenure is 3.2 years. And on average, my CAC is $50. And with that, that's a very simplistic customer lifetime value model. It's average amount times frequency times tenure minus the CAC. So in this case, with these numbers, it's about $1,700 is your customer lifetime value. So that's the amount that a customer is likely to spend throughout their life with you. This is a very important number. This is a modern marketing metric, and it's something that all organizations should be doing. Very few are doing. So while you can look top down, it's also very important to understand what is the customer lifetime value per segment. So if you have a business customer versus a consumer customer, what's the difference between those two customer lifetime values? So very important to have understood this per segment. And if you can go as far as doing a bottom-up calculation, you can really understand the individual's lifetime value. And then you can start to really understand what are the different segments of lifetime value. And as I mentioned before, valuing the funnel. Once I've got that customer lifetime value number down the bottom, $1,700, I can then, if I know the conversion rate through my funnel, all the way from ad impression down to web visitor, down to a subscriber that's not yet a customer, down to a one-time customer, and maybe then to a repeat customer. Every organization's funnel may look slightly different, and there may be multiple different funnels. But if you have your funnel and you know your conversion rates through it, and those are reliable conversion rates, then you can figure out what is the value of a website visitor to me. So in this case, if we look at this, a regular customer is $1,700, a one-time customer is $84. So if I have a one-time purchase, then thanks, Henry. If I have a one-time purchase, then because I have a 5% conversion rate from a one-time to a repeat, I can value a one-time purchase as $84 on average. And I can go all the way up to my ad impression value, which in this case is 15 cents. The reason it's very important to do this is if I'm spending 30 cents per ad impression, then I'm spending too much. And I should really work on either increasing my lifetime value so that the value of that ad impression goes up with it, or I increase the ad impression conversion rate from an ad impression to a website visitor. If I increase that by another 1%, if I double that to 2%, then my ad impression value actually doubles as well. So this is really how you can tweak the values of each of these different parts of your funnel is by either increasing the lifetime value at the bottom, or it's by increasing any of those conversion percentages throughout the funnel. And what we find with many customers when we really do this is we find that, oh, great, their average is $16.87 per customer, but not all customers are equal. And in many cases, we have found that some of their customers are negative customer lifetime value. And that usually happens if the customer lifetime value of that one individual is lower than the customer acquisition cost. So a really great example of this, and I've done this recently, is I was in Melbourne and I was only there for a month, and I signed up for a gym for a $50 trial for 2 weeks. And I used the gym so much with no intention to sign up as a customer. So I would have got 10 sessions at the value of $30 per session. So I would have got the value of $300 worth of sessions of their gym classes at the cost of $50. So they actually paid an acquisition cost of $250 for me to not be acquired. So I was actually, in that case, I was a negative customer lifetime value customer. So what their goal is, or should have been, is actually to get me to sign up to becoming a member. What they could have done to avoided me taking advantage of that situation as a customer is maybe had a qualification criteria of, do I actually live in Melbourne? And maybe an interview to check I was qualified to take on that free deal. If they'd interviewed me, they would have found out pretty quickly that I wasn't really planning to stay. So, I mean, it's just one example, but the whole idea is you need to consciously be aware of which of your customers are positive and which are negative. If they're negative, you either avoid those customers or you find a smart way to turn them into positive customers. In the same way, if I've got a customer that is lower than my median, let's say I've got a customer that is $1,000 customer lifetime value, what can I do to bring them up to the median? So, and what can I do if I've got a higher paying customer? What can I do to get more out of them? And so it's really, our goal is to shift them into the right side and increase that average median, and avoid any customers that are costing us more than they're generating for us, because that will bring down the median. So if we think about this, then it becomes critical that every organization is measuring their customer lifetime value on a per customer basis. So yeah, hopefully this makes sense. But this is, again, it's something that not many organizations are thinking about. It's a really big opportunity for any marketer, any director of any company to take this knowledge back into their business and ask these questions. Hey guys, are we doing this? Do we do any kind of modeling where we understand what is the lifetime value of our customers? And do we do it on a per customer basis? Do we have a snapshot of this record so that we can see what the changes over time? If I were to change any of these numbers, would I be able to see what that delta is? So, and it's not commonly done. So if you guys take this tidbit, you guys can make a massive impact to the entire organization's profitability and revenue by just tweaking this. And the way that we would take this information and go to the next step is really to think through, what is my life cycle of the customer and what can I change in that life cycle experience to just nudge people along a bit further, make it a bit easier for them to convert. And this is how we visualize a customer experience. We say there's a customer persona on the left. We understand the current customer experience. What have we currently got in place across their major life cycle steps? In this case, it's a non-profit example: prospect, nurture, donate, support, advocate. So that's the life cycle. And then within the life cycle, how do they donate? What are the current features for donation? Credit card purchase, bank deposit, check, one-time subscription. There's a thank you journey. There's an update your payment details journey, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we've currently got. But what if we had a, I could view my purchase history, or I could cancel my recurring purchases anytime. Therefore, there's more trust to go into a recurring purchase arrangement. I can view the impact of my donations potentially. There's maybe pop-ups and personalization on the website that really talk to what I care about. All of those kind of things will increase the amount of donations that I get as a nonprofit. And everything that we do throughout this life cycle should have the intention of increasing that customer lifetime value. And again, going back to what that is I can reduce the CAC, I can increase the RFM, I can increase the tenure. All of those different things should be our focus for how do we get ROI out of the customer experience. Another major part of this is, and this should be top of mind for everybody working with customer data, is what is the risk and reward of having that customer database? Obviously, if I have a customer data breach in my organization, there's a massive reputational impact of doing that. And it's for obvious reasons, right? If I've had a breach, it's less likely that customers will want to trust me with their customer data, because for them, it could mean a devastating spam risk. You know, they could have their identity stolen. They could have their credit card details published on the dark web, all sorts of things that can be really dramatic to the lives of these customers, because you have been careless with their customer data. And it's not even being careless. It's just, it could be someone has intentionally done something bad. And even though you had controls in place, it could be, somebody infiltrated, they have a friend that works there and they were able to get into their login details and secretly do it. All sorts of things can be done to hack data now from organizations. So it's really important that you pay attention to this. The way I like to think about it is as an asset. So it's similar to having money. Think about it like money. You put your money in the bank and you think about it like it's the customer's money, like their data is their money that you're putting in your bank. And you need to make sure that bank is very secure so that you don't have anyone take it from you. Like, it's very simple that you shouldn't do that. I should also think about that asset as something that I can use to make money. It's got value if I use it. I can monetize a database. I think everyone would have heard about doing that. So if I think about monetizing it, I can start to understand what is the value of that database, as equally as I can think about what is the liability of that database. And if the value of the database to the organization is lower than the liability of the database, then why have it? You shouldn't hold it if you're not going to benefit out of the risk of holding that database. And the way to value the database is very simple. It's by looking at what is the value of those leads that aren't yet customers. If I go back to my customer funnel and I can value the lead because I know the conversion rate of a lead to a customer, then I can value what is the average subscriber value. In this screenshot, it's 9 cents per subscriber. And because I know how many subscribers I've got, I can value that subscriber database. It's the same as if I know the lifetime value of a customer, which is, in this case, it's $21,000, and I've got 3,000 customer contacts, then it's 63 million. I don't know if that number's quite right, but you can multiply the value of the customer by the amount of customers you've got in your database, and that's the value of that customer database. So if your data breach risk is higher than the value of the customer database, then you've got a problem. In this case, the data breach risk is 4.5 million and the customer database value is 63 million. So it's very positive. But if you're not actually getting $63 million out of the database, then it's not positive. So I would think about your customer data like it's a valuable asset. The CFO should be aware of the value and the liability of your customer database. And often CFOs are not, and I'm just saying they should be for the record. So I would make sure that your directors are really across this information. And this is the whole point of this exercise and those AICD events that we're running, is really to make sure that the directors of organizations are aware of the consequences of having this data, but also what is the opportunity if I use it in a wise way. A lot of people ask, how do you quantify the value of a data breach? So there are multiple ways of doing it. We've got a few different ways, and it depends on the client, because it is quite hard to quantify what is the likelihood of a risk happening if it's never happened before. Because you could say, well, we've never had a data breach in the past, therefore the risk is zero. But obviously that's stupid. So we know that it's happening more and more. And there's, according to IBM, this research study done, there's a 27.9% chance that every organization will have a customer data breach in a 2-year period. So if I were to think, okay, well, half of that is 14%. So every year there's a 14% chance that every organization will have a data breach. So that's more than 1 in 10 chance. It's a massive risk, and it's something that we should be very, very aware of. IBM has also said in another study that if I have a zero trust architecture, which means that you don't trust humans to make sure that they don't cause a data breach. There's no manual downloads or uploads of customer data. You don't send customer data in email to your partners. You don't have to upload your customer data anywhere manually. If we have a zero trust architecture, then there's a 20.5% data breach saving. So that way we've got the two metrics that we need based on the IBM surveys, 14% likely every 2 years. And if you have a zero trust architecture, then there's a 20% reduction in the cost of that data breach. We also know, and it depends on which research you follow, there's about a 237 Australian dollar cost per record breached. So if you know your database size, you know the cost per record breach, you know the likelihood, and you know the saving of having that zero trust architecture, you can say, what was my liability before a zero trust architecture, and what is my liability after a zero trust architecture? And just to define the zero trust architecture, it's just really like the system is set up so it doesn't rely on humans to do the right thing. Great. I've got a question from Marcus. How do you apply this to a B2B concept and business models where your buyer isn't your user? So I'm not sure I know exactly what you mean, Marcus, where your buyer isn't your user, where it's maybe B2B to C. So even if you're dealing with a B2B customer and a B2B database, so a B2B customer will still have a lifetime value because they will bring business to you. For example, my business, we're a Salesforce consulting partner. We get referrals from Salesforce all the time, and they aren't our end customer. They refer us to other end customers. But what I can quantify is the average value of their referral and the frequency of the referral happening. So I can actually put a value of that referral mechanism to that Salesforce account executive because they refer us business regularly. So when I capture one Salesforce rep in my funnel, I actually know that I can prospect that Salesforce rep, and as I bring them down, and they eventually will make a successful referral to me, so I can value the lifetime value of that customer as well as the funnel for them. So yeah, if it's like B2B or there's a referral mechanism, even if it's an employee, I can value the lifetime value of an employee to me depending on how it works. In my business, we have billable consultants, so if I bring a grad in, even if they don't make any money for me initially, I know that eventually they will start making money for me. And I can see, okay, what is the average tenure of an employee? What is the cost to recruit an employee? How much money would they eventually generate for me per year? And then I can figure out what the lifetime value of an employee is. So you could technically apply the same methodology to any human that interacts with any organization. There could be a human lifetime value. Anyone that has a negative lifetime value, we don't want to deal with. I hope that's answered your question, Marcus. Please tell me if it didn't. But yeah, thank you. Great question. So building a ethical first-party database. So this is regarding the spam breach risk. Is we know GDPR, we have heard about CCPA. There's changing legislation all the time around customer data, and it's also very important to consider the different countries that you operate in. They all have their own legislation, and it's also dynamic and changing all the time. So it's very important to consider this. A big part of tying this up is knowing where is your customer mastered, where are their preferences mastered. And often where companies fall into trouble is where they have different customer databases that all have different places where they can unsubscribe or update their preferences. So if I can go to your website and unsubscribe there, but if I still get the emails from your email marketing tool because it's disconnected from your website, then that is a spam breach risk. If I call your call center and say, hey, I'd like to unsubscribe, and then they still send me emails, then that is a spam breach risk. If I have a pop-up on the website that says, hey, would you like to download this free ebook? And then they send me the ebook to my email, and then I go, oh, unsubscribe. And if that pop-up app isn't connected with my other email marketing tools, that's a spam breach risk. So it really is very common that organizations have multiple places that send emails to customers. And if they're not all in sync and all aware of where is the master and at what time exactly was the last unsubscribe and who got that, it's very easy for organizations to muck this up. And I won't name names, but there has been large organizations, household brands that have been fined millions of dollars because they haven't done this correctly. The major issue with this one is that a lot of boards aren't really aware of this level of detail. Like, this is a very detailed little thing that marketers are running. And you've got some 23-year-old marketer that's just out of university that is eager to press send on that email, but they don't really understand all of the enterprise architecture that your organization's got, especially in large organizations. So having this really well understood and having clarity around exactly where is the master and exactly where customers can unsubscribe from, this is the key to solving this one. Great. So those are the major levers. There's other levers as well. You can also do things like reduce the cost to call in the call center. You can increase the productivity of employees. You can, do all sorts of things. You can even things like making your employees happier so they give a better experience. But those are a little bit fuzzier. For this, these are very clear metrics that any marketer can put in place. So how do you make a hypothesis? So it's really around understanding the initiative or the project that you're doing, coming up with some theory, and maybe you'd have one project, maybe there's multiple theories or hypotheses around what you think the benefits would be, and then using your assumptions around what you know to justify those. So as much as possible, we want to be data-driven and using accurate numbers. Sometimes we don't have accurate numbers or we don't have historical numbers and we just have to make a hypothesis. That's all you can do, but at least you've written it down because you can then validate it later. We also want to know what is the lifetime of that initiative or project. So you may put something in temporarily with the intention that it's only going to last 3 years, or you may put something in strategically that's going to be there for 10, 15, or 20 years. If you think about any organization that buys assets or manufacturing production, like I buy a new robot for my conveyor line, you have to think about how much value is that asset going to deliver for how long, how will it depreciate over time or appreciate, and then you can figure out, well, is it good or bad that I buy it? Should I buy it or not? And if I don't have a path to when it's going to break even against its cost, then you don't really have enough information to make the decision. And think that organizations have been doing this for hundreds of years, thousands of years even. They've been thinking, okay, I will buy something and I'll use that to produce multiple products and get value from that. And maybe after 1 year of having that operate every day, I will break even on that asset and then it will start producing a positive ROI. And we use net present value as a way of thinking through that. What is the value of that investment, including the cash discount rate? So that's really the way to think about an initiative, is you are actually spending money up front on an asset, and then you're using that asset over time. You've got to pay a maintenance fee as well. So yeah, really thinking through that. If you think about the hypothesis, you think about the lifetime, the benefit, you can figure out the total benefit relatively easily. And then if you group those together, that kind of sums up your different initiatives and what's the total ROI. So when we think about a platform like Salesforce, this is very important. So you would have your direct benefits, which are your savings or maybe revenue from new purchases that you generate from that initiative or investment. You'd also have your costs. So what is my license fee for the cloud software like Salesforce? What is my partner cost for them to implement and support it? And what are my internal costs? How many team members internally are actually allocated to build and support that Salesforce project? So if I think through the tangible benefits minus the intangible benefits, then I end up with a very direct ROI. It's my benefit minus my cost. I may also have intangible benefits, which I can't exactly tie back to this, but it's things like, my lifetime value uplift. I may not be able to attribute all of that. So if I measure my lifetime value at the start of the project and at the end of the project, hopefully it will go up. And I may not know if it's due to the project I've done, or maybe it's just a good season for my product, or maybe I did like something in the news that was really positive. So we've generally got a direct ROI and an indirect ROI with these kind of projects. This is a year-on-year graph for how you may look at it. The red is the cost, the green line is the benefit, and the black is the ROI. So that's the benefit minus the cost. And you can see in the first year, it was a negative cost, obviously, and a negative ROI because there wasn't enough done on the platform to actually generate that ROI. In year 2, there was a slightly positive ROI, and then it keeps going up from there. So hopefully you have this trend. A lot of organizations that aren't tracking the ROI, they won't have any positive trend because they're like, well, we've got it. We intuitively know that it's the right thing. Maybe this blue line, the lifetime value, maybe that line will go up. But unless we're tracking a tangible benefit to the investment in that platform, we actually don't know if it's paying off or paying for itself. We don't know when it's going to pay for itself. And this is something that organizations are not doing very well. The CFO should really be across this. The CIO should also be across this. It's actually the CIO's job to make sure that every platform investment that's made has a business case attached to it and has some mechanism to track it. The number of CIOs doing this is very few and far between, based on what I've seen. So, and no offense to anyone, but it's just really important, and it's just hard to do. And there's not really any systems in place that do this for companies. So, yeah, just do it would be my advice, because only if you do this can you start to prioritize based on actual benefit. And this is a framework that we like to use where you've got a high benefit, low cost. We would consider this low hanging fruit versus high benefit, high cost. That we would call competitive advantage. So if you think about doing something that's a very hard thing to do, it creates a barrier to entry that your competitors won't be able to do so easily. It's less obvious, and it really puts you ahead in the market. If it's in the bottom left, it's low benefit, low cost. It's polishing. You probably want to do it, but is there a tangible benefit? It's low cost, it doesn't hurt, but maybe if you've got OCD, this is the kind of thing you'd want to do, but it's not necessarily going to give you bang for your buck. And obviously, if it's high cost, low benefit, this is your lowest priority, and most often it's a time waster. Great. Oh, we've got a question from Robert Lopez. We tend to exclude sunk costs from our ROI calculations as we believe these construction costs are required regardless to get to a state to be able to maximize returns. Do you feel sunk costs should be excluded from the ROI calculations? Yeah, it's a really great question, and it's up to you. I mean, I would say it's good to be aware of these sunk costs in your calculations and having a clear definition of what that is. Usually, I'd refer to a sunk cost as kind of a throwaway cost. I would think about the sunk cost like an enabler. So you have to enable your platforms so that you can build on top of them with ROI activities. So yeah, it just depends on your definitions, but I wouldn't get hung up on the sunk costs. I'd say having a non-ROI generating investment is a necessary evil, maybe the wrong word. It's necessary in order for there to be an ROI generating activity. At the end of the day, the net investment should include the sunk costs and the ROI generating costs. But yeah, it's a great question, Robin. I know we've discussed this a few times. it's just one of those necessary things. It's kind of, I'm just thinking of a good example of a sunk cost. Like if I want to, I don't know, if I want to raise a child in a healthy home, I have to buy a home to have a child. Is the home part of the cost of the child, or is it a sunk cost in order to provide a healthy environment for a child to grow up? And it's not a direct cost, but it's an enabling cost. So yeah, it's a great question. I think it's really up to you and how you define that. Yeah, it's always, I love our conversations, Robert. Great, thank you, Harold. Very good. Great. All right. So that's really the levers, the hypothesis, the actual tracking of the ROI. This is the hard part. Salesforce, if you're a Salesforce customer, it has a really great feature that not many organizations know about, which is the campaign object. Campaign object, if you use it really well, it's a really easy place to track the ROI. It's a native feature in Sales Cloud, and it allows you to, if you put a contact or a lead into a campaign and then they buy from you and they have an opportunity, it will sum up all of the opportunities closed won from contacts or leads in that campaign. So this is the go-to place for how I track ROI. There's other ways of doing it, which I'll talk about, but this is the most obvious way. And what I said before around these initiatives, so having that hypothesis for each initiative, having a lifetime, having a project cost and a maintenance cost. So, and I think about this like owning a yacht, not that I own a yacht, but if you bought a yacht for $1 million, you'd expect there's a 10% annual fee to maintain that yacht. So every year there'd be $100,000 cost just for the pleasure of owning a yacht. It's the same with a technology investment. You've got to consider there's a maintenance fee, and it may be to have someone check that it still works every year. And I like a customer journey is a great example, because a lot of people put in a customer journey, it's an automated experience, and then they set and forget. And then they'll get a complaint. The customer will be like, "Hey, there was an error here, and a link that you had in the third email went to a broken web page." And you actually should have a process in place to make sure you check back on every automation you've set up. You need an owner of that automation to be responsible for it, and someone to proactively maintain it. I like to think of it like a toilet cleaner, where you've got someone that checks off the toilet has been cleaned every week or every month. Same thing with any kind of customer automation. You want to make sure that you're checking back, and that's the maintenance cost. If you add that up, so if you multiply the maintenance cost by the life and you add the project cost, you've got the total cost of ownership of that initiative. And then you can also hypothesize, what is my annual benefit times the lifetime, and that gives you your lifetime benefit. And then obviously lifetime benefit minus your total cost is your ROI. So that's very simple. It's a simple way of looking at it. AF Digital has actually built a app in Salesforce to track this. We call it an ROI app. It's pending a better name. But we basically use it to manage and track your licenses. So if you've got a Salesforce license, if you've got a MuleSoft license, if you've got a whatever license fee, even if it's non-Salesforce, you can track it in this tool from the planning stage all the way through to decommissioning it. And also its renewal dates, its annual license fees, etc. It's really just a place to track those licenses. We can also attach the initiatives that you plan around those licenses to it. And then with those initiatives, we can estimate and forecast the benefits and cost of those initiatives. And that way, against that data, we can also come back to it after the fact and track the actual benefits and costs. And the thing is, where would you do that without a tool like this? And that way we can report back to our stakeholders, this is what we had as our hypothesis. These are the steps we took to approve it. And this is the actual results we got from that investment. So So that's really important to understand and it's important to have somewhere to track it. And if you don't have somewhere to track it, please do talk to us. We've got a place for you to track it. Here's another screenshot, and this is just showing you how simple it is to track and manage the life cycle of your licenses, your initiatives, and especially with the results attached to them. And it's very fast and easy to use. You can do this with an Excel spreadsheet, but where is it mastered? How much rigor and governance is there around it? With a tool like this, you can actually plan and manage and approve these initiatives. Again, the benefit hypotheses is really important. It's when I think hypothesis, I think of it like a goal, but a lot of it is just a hypothesis when you start because you may not have the data. So having somewhere to put a logical hypothesis, including your assumptions, is really important. So as an organization, how do I get started? Firstly, you need to agree, what is your customer lifetime value? And as I mentioned and kept rattling on about, not many organizations have thought through this. A lot of marketers say they have done this, but they haven't actually done much more than a napkin type calculation. It's really important that if you're a marketer, that you've talked to your business intelligence or reporting teams and interrogated them and asked them to figure this out. You need to ask them to calculate it for each of your major marketing segments. You need to also ask them to calculate it bottom up. Can I see it on a per customer basis? And then you need to ask them, can I snapshot this every single day so that I can see if it's changing, going up or down per segment, per customer, or top down? A big part of this is agreeing on what the formula is. This is a basic version of the formula. You could also consider churn as part of this formula. You can also consider the cost to service a customer as part of this formula. You could consider the profitability of the company as part of this formula. So there's many depths and types of formulas that you can apply to customer lifetime value modeling. It does differ per industry as well. So the way you'd measure the CLV of a bank is very different to how it would be for a retail customer. It's very different to how it is for an insurance provider. So getting this formula right, getting someone to reliably calculate it so there's a source of truth for it, and having the organization leaders aware of it, understanding it, reporting on it, managing it, owning aspects of it, that's really, really critical. Before you do your customer experience initiatives, you should have an ROI hypothesis already figured out. And you need to get that approved so that it's not just you making it up and you kind of fingers crossed, let's see how it goes. If I don't get it, I won't tell anyone. If I do get it, then I'll say, I told you so. That's what I said. So you've got to really put skin in the game here, write it down, get it approved, because that will force you to think through those assumptions and hypotheses. It will force you to be conservative in your approach. And that's something that we've been working with Robert on a lot is, how do we be very conservative about this so that we're not, too optimistic. We want to be tough on ourselves here and really make sure that we are delivering a positive result to our stakeholders. Ideally, if we've done that for all of our projects, we need to be able to prioritize as well. So why would we do this project over that project? And instead of it being an emotional decision because we think it's the right thing to do, it becomes a very logical decision. Once we've actually done the initiative, how do we track and report on the actuals? So similar to if you had deployed a journey into production, you've got a live journey there, it's running every day. Is someone going to come in and check it after 3 months of running, after 6 months of running, after 12 months of running? Who is going to check that? Who's responsible for doing that? Whose job is it to do that? Who checks that they have done their job? Where do they put that data? Like, where do they actually put a report? Do they just write it into a Word document and email it around and kumbaya? What if they forget to do that? Who gets fired if it's not done? What happens if it's not performing well? those kind of things. Like, unless you have a process for that in your organization, it won't get done. Unless you have tasked someone to do that, it won't get done. Unless someone gets fired, if it's not done, it won't get done. So I'm not saying fire people. I'm just saying someone needs to be accountable for it. And finally, probably should be a first step, is there needs to be some kind of steering committee for this to make sure that there are directors and business owners involved in these initiatives that are aware of what you're trying to do. They have skin in the game in terms of the ROI actuals. They are asking the questions, when was the last time this was checked? What are we going to do next? They're the ones making the decisions on those license initiatives. So it's really important to have people around. It can't just be the marketing specialist that's doing their journeys, they're building them. They can't just build them and let them go and have nobody aware of them. Because what if there is a data breach? What if there is a spam breach? What if your CAC is higher than your customer lifetime value? What if a large population of your customer database is negatively geared? Who's across that is your senior leaders. And too often there are not senior leaders that are involved in this level of detail, and they are flying blind because organizations haven't been doing this. They've been relying on their EBIT and revenue numbers for so long. We're too far gone for that. We're too far deep into a new world of technology automation to just think about the bottom line result. We really need to think about the lifetime value of a customer and how do we massage the business so that it provides a positive result for every individual customer. So again, we are having these sessions. So 12th of October through to the 2nd of November, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide. If we get a positive result, we're going to go broader than that. We'll look at New Zealand next and maybe some other countries. This is a very important message that we want to bring out. Today's talk has been a very fast tidbit of what I'm actually going to go through. In this seminar, you'll be given a template on how you can track and report on the ROI of your CX initiatives. So I'd really encourage you to join. The bit.ly link is there. I'll share it as well. And that is it. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I really appreciate the comments and questions. Henry, Marcus, Robert, Harold, thank you guys so much, and have a great day.